Oh man, I was the angriest person I had ever met. I mean, this short of having to go to anger management. And I lived my life pretty much in a temper. And so all I wanted was to feel happiness and stop this war that I had inside of me of this chaos, frustration, and anger, and just feel peace. And it was like a constant battle. So for me, happiness is feeling peace every day, feeling fulfilled, and experiencing joy.
So we are going to go from that to happiness today. I believe that happiness is possible. And in my quest to find happiness, to find that quiet mind, I'm always seeking guests who can bring light and wisdom to the subject of happiness. I remember telling my son years and years ago that happiness is not an everyday event. And many of us think that that's why we're here, is to be happy. But no one ever promised us that we would be happy every single day. I told my son, actually, life is about managing the mundane and then surfing on some waves of happiness that you find. Our program today is being brought to you by StreamYard. Put the power of live streaming to work for your business, your cause, or your brand. Go to StreamYardCause.com and sign up for your free account and get a $10 credit. That's StreamYardCause.com. Put the power of live streaming to work for you on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, and the like. You can be streaming live like we are right now, adding lower thirds, playing videos, and just making your live videos professional, which means that you have a more professional brand. So go to StreamYardCause.com, get your free account, and get that $10 credit today, and tell them Coz Green sent you. Let's talk happiness then. My guest is a transformational happiness mentor, happiness podcaster. See, there's a lot of happiness in there. And then she says, and speaker, but I'll say, and happiness speaker. She blends her experience as a global marketing director, leading international teams, with her mentoring certification to help clients, individuals who find themselves wishing for more purpose, peace, and happiness, to discover their personal happiness routines. Together, they uncover and implement the life they've always dreamed of. So do you want happiness? Do you want happiness in your life? Then, my friends, let's put our hands together and welcome happiness mentor, happiness coach, happiness speaker, Taylor Proctor. Taylor, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I watched you on Facebook and I said, we got to get Taylor on here talking about happiness.
My favorite subject.
So, your favorite subject. In fact, you have this as your whole focus. And I love that happiness is your focus. So let's start with that premise. Is it possible to be happy 100% of the time?
No.
Okay. Now that
Short
that's
answer.
out of the way, how can we let's define what you say happiness is first.
Yeah. So I love this.
Define happiness for us so we can all be on the same page.
Yeah. I love this question because happiness is unique to the individual. So happiness for me is living a life of purpose and feeling at peace. My own journey, I was the angriest person I had ever met. I mean, this short of having to go to anger management. And I lived my life pretty much in a temper. And so all I wanted was to feel happiness and stop this war that I had inside of me of this chaos, frustration, and anger, and just feel peace. And it was like a constant battle. So for me, happiness is feeling peace every day, feeling fulfilled, and experiencing joy. And all three of those wrap up to the umbrella of happiness for me. But what happiness could mean for other people is unique to them. And I actually believe that the concept of happiness being a single thing for everybody is detrimental to our growth into the happiness space. Because if we see what makes someone else happy or what helps them be happy, and we think, well, that's the key, that's the magic ticket, and that doesn't have something to do with our life, or that's not something that actually helps us be happier, then we feel like we're failures or there's something wrong with us because that made that person happy. Why isn't it making me happy? So my personal definition of happiness may not be your personal definition of happiness, but it's an understanding of what happiness means to us as individuals. And I think that is everything. And leaning back to your first question about like the yes or no, can you be happy 100% of the time? The short answer is no. But we can move to the positive side of like the emotional pendulum much more frequently versus living in the negative side.
And I agree. I believe people very rarely find happiness. So I like what you're saying, that you have to define it for yourself. And I love that, because many people are chasing other people's definition of happiness. Therefore, they never find happiness because they haven't decided what they believe in, which dogmas are true for them, what their definition is. So you're suggesting, first and foremost, you need to decide what makes you happy, what your
Totally.
definition is.
Definitely. And I think it's not just a split second decision like, well, I guess this makes me happy. And it's more of like trial and error, testing, figuring it out, and finding out what brings you that, if you're going to use my definition, that peace, that joy, that fulfillment. And then leaning into those spaces. It's not about what everyone else has going for them. And I love this idea and concept of a societal checklist, because I think we all have bought into this idea that, oh, you've gone to school, you've got the degree, you got the great job that pays pretty well, you bought the nice car, you have the nice house, you have the wonderful spouse, the beautiful family, and you're working towards, or you're already in that corner office or that successful entrepreneurial journey. And what happens is we have bought into this idea as a society, which is why it's the societal checklist, that if I hit all of these points, then I'll be successful. And in our mind, we have somehow connected that success equals happiness. So what happens is we are on our way, or we've reached the top of that checklist, and we look around and we go, I thought this would make me happy, and I'm not. But I've worked so hard. I don't want to throw all that away, but I'm deeply unhappy. And that's where it comes to figuring out what happiness means to you and putting the habits in place so you can feel happy every single day. And that doesn't mean you have to wipe out the checklist, because that could be years and years of hard work. But instead, it means, okay, I can have these things, I can thrive and be successful. But if I add happiness to that mix every single day, all of it will expand, and I'll have a life that I wouldn't have been able to imagine before, that has everything I've worked hard for and then some, and the most important part, which is my personal happiness.
Isn't that the great lie that society tells us, though, that success equals happiness, where in a way they have nothing to do with themselves? I guess in a way you could say happiness equals success.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you've got to define what success really means to you. I chased success for years and realized that was the world's definition of success, not mine. And then once I discovered what that looked like for me, to your point, I achieved that, but I had the unquiet mind and I wasn't happy.
Right.
And so it was like, you know what? Screw the whole happy or the whole success mantra. Go find happiness, because that's a state of being, not something you ever reach or hold. It's within you. Happiness is never external. It's always internal, right?
Completely right. And I would say too, there's 2 points here. One is that we've bought into as a society this checklist, but then when we reach the checklist and we look around and go, well, I'm not happy, as a society, we have also romanticized what I call, and this is no slight on the book or the movie, but I call it the eat, pray, love method, where we think that, great, I'm unhappy. That means I have to divorce my spouse. I have to quit my job. I have to go travel the world, go to 3 different countries in the span of a year. Then I'll find myself, then I'll be happy. And that's scary. Nobody really is like, I've worked so hard for all these things. Let me just chuck it all away because I want to be happy. In fact, you can be happy and have all those things that you have strived so hard for. Because the thing is when you can find your daily happiness, now you have the mental and emotional clarity to go look at that checklist, the things that you have, and go, okay, so what needs to be tweaked? What can I edit in my life to support my lifestyle where happiness is the first priority versus success? So it can be a lot easier than the eat, pray, love method, which everybody seems to think is how they can be happy. So I think that's the first point.
Where is that all coming from right now? Culturally, I see that
Everywhere.
all too often, where people are just running away from each other instead of realizing, okay, let me find happiness within myself and then share that with the person I love. It's like, no, let's throw away all the relationships and start from scratch.
Yeah.
That seems to me like you're you're throwing away your greatest treasures. And I understand there comes a time and place in your life where you have to disconnect from certain relationships because they don't serve you. And that doesn't make you a dork or a selfish person. It just is what it is. They're not on the same frequency or vibration. So you do disconnect. But is it kind of a cultural fad right now to just blow up relationships and start over? What are you seeing? Why is that happening so much?
I think it's happening so much because just like you said in the point two of the internal happiness, right? Happiness is not brought on by external circumstances, but in our brain, it's easier to, I'm going to go with a bold word here, but it's easier to blame an external circumstance on our unhappiness and our dissatisfaction versus coming inside internally looking and going, okay, so what mindsets do I have right now that are limiting me? What inputs am I bringing into my life that are influencing the way I view the world, my perspectives, and really leaving that in a negative space? What are all of these things that I can do to change and adjust my life internally to be happy? Then looking out and saying, okay, so what parts of my life don't fit the life that I want to have versus I'm not happy. This life must not be right for me. So I'm just going to trash it. This doesn't work. And what happens is, and you're seeing this, I'm seeing this, we as a society have bought into that model and we see people getting divorced multiple times or moving through relationships or not being able to have a steady job because they're like, this obviously isn't the one. I have to go hop to the next one. And this one obviously isn't the one and I need to hop to the next one instead of going, okay, why is this not working? And I love this phrase. My father said it to me at one point, and at the time I needed to hear it because I was angry at the world, but he didn't say it to me, but he said it to me, but he wasn't saying it to me to hear, but I heard it and it's changed everything. And that is, if the whole world is out to get you, there's only one common denominator.
Oh,
yeah. And the thought there is that, okay, I can't change the whole world, but I can own my power. I can accept responsibility and accountability for my life, and I can make those changes. And it doesn't have to be the eat, pray, love model where I change everything and I'm still unhappy because now I get to live in Alaska and it's beautiful, but I really don't know what brings happiness to me every single day. So I'm going to try that for 6 months and then I'm going to just up and leave and move somewhere else. That doesn't work. You have to find it within yourself, to your point.
So is it because we're listening to the victim saboteur? Is it because of the proliferation of social media that we're comparing ourselves to the perfection model that everybody else lives on social media? I just feel maybe it is because of social media and just our 1 hour news cycles now, but it just seems so much more prevalent. Have we really changed as a society, or is it just more obvious, do you think?
I think it's more obvious and it's hit a grander scale. So back in the day, pre-internet, keeping up with the Joneses meant the houses, the neighbors on your street. So if you saw that the Joneses 2 houses down got a boat, you're like, well, I want a boat. Don't I deserve a boat? They did this in the community and that actually is not great. And I do good things. So I deserve a boat. So I'm going to go get a boat. But what happens is that now as a society and with social media, the Joneses aren't just down the street. They are all over. They're across the world. Like I follow people, they're in the UK. And so if I'm in that space where I am looking at them going, well, don't I deserve happiness? They seem to be happy all the time. Now I'm keeping up with the Joneses on a global scale versus the down the street scale, which if you think about that kind of pressure, when it was closer to home, it was a pressure, but it was just kind of part of your everyday life. And it was like, okay, yeah, the Joneses, they got it, but I can make these decisions for myself. But now the global pressure of performing and being happy is on a mass scale. And if we look at it with a comparison mindset, it is detrimental to our happiness.
That is a great observation. I love the way you're saying that before it was comparing yourself to the Joneses down the street. Now it's the Joneses and every other nationality around the world. And let's just remind everybody out there, for the most part, of all the people I've interviewed around the world, and we're talking thousands of people over the years, not very many people have ever admitted to me that they're truly happy. They can tell you all about their life of despair and everything that's wrong with it. And that's why my quest has become to find that happiness. And I want us all to know it's possible. That doesn't mean that days don't bring challenges and disappointment and frustration. And to your point, Taylor, doesn't mean you never get angry, but you're able to go somewhere where you can find peace and contentment. And I think really that's a special thing that most people never get in their life. So what's some of the things we can do to ultimately find it? So we're going to define what happiness means to us. What's next?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is looking at your beliefs and your expectations. So the first is, what is that belief after you figure it out, or you're in the process? It's never a permanent thing. It can shift and change, but you're in the process of figuring out what helps you feel happier. The first thing is looking at that societal checklist. Have you bought into that? Do you have an expectation that if I get this job, then I'll be happy? If I marry this person, then I'll be happy. If I get this house, then I'll be happy. If I drive this car, then I'll be happy. If you find yourself falling into those traps, first part is being aware and shifting the expectation that success doesn't equal happiness. However, happiness can equal success. So there's that difference there. The other thing is I would recommend a shift in your belief and being aware of, do you believe that the act of happiness, the emotion of happiness is natural, inherent? Because as humans, the desire for happiness is natural. The emotion in the act of happiness is not.
How do you mean?
It is in fact a learned skill.
Mm.
And when you can shift that expectation, you go from seeing the Joneses and going, they're so happy. What is wrong with me? Like every time I try to not, this is my personal story here. Every time I try to not be angry and I backtrack and I lose my temper again, there must be something wrong with me because everybody else seems to have happiness so easy. And I want it so bad, but I just can't seem to figure it out. I must be broken. I must be wrong. And it wasn't until I shifted and got this belief transition from, wait a minute, the desire is inherent. Everybody wants to be happy. Even if you have a worst enemy, they want to be happy too. But the act of happiness is a learned skill. And shifting that puts it back into your control. So going back to like, is it internal or external? Takes it out of the external, brings it into the internal, brings it back to your control. If it's a learned skill, you can learn it and you can apply it every single day.
So why don't more people learn it?
Because it's not something that's traditionally taught. We're taught, meet the checklist, then you'll be happy, versus find what happiness means to you and then put in place the emotional management habits, the routines in your every single day to help you have that internal happiness. And I'm happy to share some techniques and some exercises to get you there.
Well, let's do that because I believe that anger and that frustration does come from unfulfilled expectations, right? So once we've defined it, we've got to be able to check our expectations based on our own divine mirror, not the social mirror of what people expect of us. But I know disappointment and happiness can come when we have unfulfilled expectations. So checking those expectations is very important. So I want to reiterate that as well. So tell us about some of the techniques and exercises.
Definitely. So I love that you said check your expectations. I'm going to be a little bit pushy here and also say that's easier said than done.
Okay, that's easier said than done.
And it kind of falls along that like, well, just think positive model. And it's like, how do I do that? So I want to equip you and your audience with the tools that can help with that. So the first one is a technique and a method I like to call CLEAR. Now, CLEAR stands for circumstance, language, emotion, action, and results. And the thought here is that every circumstance in your life, whether you got the promotion or you got fired, whether you're going through a divorce or you're newly married, doesn't matter. That circumstance is neutral. What happens is that we apply our internal language to said circumstance, and that provides meaning. So the language being, if I just got rear-ended in a car accident, if I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me right now? Like, this is such a waste of time. That person probably wasn't paying any attention. That language almost instantaneously leads to the emotions that I'm feeling. Now, as much as we like to pretend that we are logical beings and we make decisions and take action on logistics and analytics and we're logical, truth of it is we take action on emotions, which leads to the next piece, which is actions. So your emotions lead to the actions that you take, which then leads to the results in your life. So one of the best ways that you can check your expectations is to check the language that you're using around the circumstance, because that's setting the expectation, that's applying the meaning. So if you're feeling, let's work backwards. So if the results are that you keep on putting off the things that you want to do because you're taking the action of watching 6 hours a night of Netflix. Are you still watching? And you're like, yes, I am, right? You're watching 6 hours of Netflix. Why are you doing that? Because you have an emotion that you don't want to deal with and you'd rather numb it out. And now you feel like you're putting off your stuff, right? So you can kind of work up and back. Then the emotion you don't want to deal with. Let's say that you're feeling anger and overwhelm around something that happened at work. Well, why are you feeling that way? Because your language around that situation is, I should have got that promotion. I'm so angry that this happened right now. My workload is over the top, so I'm super overwhelmed. Your language is saying all of these things that's supporting down the method. But the truth of it is, the circumstances, maybe you didn't get that promotion. It's neutral. But if I didn't get that promotion, but what if I'm going to talk to my boss and say, hey, I'm actually kind of disappointed that I didn't get that promotion. Can you tell me why I didn't get it? I'd really like to see what I could do to improve and in the next 6 months be up for the next promotion. Then your language, you don't have to be happy you didn't get the promotion, but your language supports at least neutralizing those emotions in a way where you can be clear method, there's a reason. You can be clear mentally and emotionally to then take the actions that support the life that you want to get the results that you want. So if you work through the clear, again, circumstance, language, emotion, action, and results, you can work it backwards, you can work it forwards, and that is a way to set and check your expectations, as you say, around your happiness.
And nothing has meaning. Nothing has meaning until we attach that meaning.
Until
correct?
You use the language in your head, your thoughts, your internal voice applies that meaning.
That is powerful. That is very powerful. How did you discover that? And what impact has that had on your life?
Oh my goodness, it's had so much impact in my life. Fun fact.
Fun fact. Sorry, no big graphic for fun fact.
There's spatter them everywhere, right? So last summer, I was rear-ended in a car accident. And back before I had done all the emotional management, back before I became a happiness mentor and happiness became like everything and I love it and I'm happy all the time, not all the time, but happy most of the time, I was super angry. We talked about that. Well, my husband had this phrase called hell hath no fury like Taylor mildly inconvenienced.
Ooh, I can only imagine.
Red hair, you get it. I hated being inconvenienced. So last summer, now this is
It was all about you. It was all about you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I was the victim. How dare this thing happen? My language, which would lead to an action of being angry and pissed off, or an emotion, which would lead to actions of throwing the plate or being mad, stomping out, which would lead to the results of diminished relationships and an unhappy life. To go through the clear model.
Sure.
But so I had a car accident and I was at the light and I got rear-ended and I kind of looked in the rearview mirror and the person was on their phone. So we go through the light, pull over, and my initial language is I'm mildly inconvenienced. So I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, they were probably on their phone. Like, they weren't paying attention. I was going through the light. It was green. Like, what are they doing? And I started to catch myself because I've done the clear model for so long and you can do it retroactively so you can be better in the future. This was my first time actually hitting it in the moment. And I was like, whoa. Like I can feel my body getting tense. I can feel me getting angry and frustrated. And I knew if I kept on that path, my actions when I got out of the car would be angry and frustrated, which might trigger that person. And then we'd be there with the result of 2 hours. The police called, this big ordeal. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that. Who do I want to be? So I have, for my language, I always am monitoring my language using the clear method. But when it's a moment like that, I use a customized declaration that I've created for myself, which is, I am an intuitive mentor, vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. So as I'm finding myself getting worked up on all of this, I'm like, okay. I am an intuitive mentor, vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. I am an intuitive mentor, vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. I am an intuitive mentor, vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. Now, again, I don't have to be happy that I got rear-ended, but me saying that instantly connected to, well, wait a minute, if I'm angry, frustrated, and pissed off, I'm not vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. So who do I want to be in this situation, in this circumstance? And that allowed me to at least neutralize my emotions and to be able to get out of the car. And I said, hey, are you okay? And this also would have triggered me in the past, but because I'm vibrant, abundant, and filled with light, they were like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, cool, I'm good too. And I'm like, is your car okay? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. So I look at mine. I'm like, well, mine's a 23-year-old car. There's not even a scratch on the bumper. You barely hit me. Like, I'm fine to call it. If you're okay, everyone in your car is okay. I'm okay. My car's okay. I'm fine to call it if you are. And she goes, okay, great. And gets in the car and drives off. And I'm like, that attitude would have really set me off before, but I want to be vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. And while I didn't have to be, oh my gosh, you hit me, I'm so excited. No, we're not playing that game. We're real people here. But I can neutralize it and act in the way that represents what I want in my life, which was, in this instance, a 5-minute ordeal on the side of the road that now makes for a great story versus a 2-hour thing that I probably at the time, way back, not a year ago, but way back, would have circulated the story to every single one of my friends about how dare this person hit me. She was so terse and testy when I got out of the car, like how dare, and it would have just spiraled and I would have kept that story of that anger. But instead, I'm like, no, I want to be vibrant, abundant, and filled with light. So that would be my next tip is when you're watching your language, have something that can bring you back into a reminder of the life that you want to have and who you want to be.
Isn't it interesting? In a way, we all have to decide what the story of our life is going to be and the character we're going to play.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a little pushback when I've said it this way. So if you can think of a better way to say this, I'm open to it. But in a way, we are actors in our own life. And we choose the script that we perform. But most people perform a script purely of reaction because we are emotional creatures, and that lizard brain or the monkey mind takes over. And so who knows what we accomplish. But what you're saying, especially with the I am statements, this is my script. This is in advance. This is what my character looks like, the one that's vibrant and full of light. And so that character would act this way in this situation. And so I get pushback when I say we're actors in our own life, but what really is the difference? Why don't we decide what the script is and do it on purpose as opposed to just reacting to the lizard brain?
I would make
a crazy concept, but don't we want to, in a way, decide in advance who we want to be and what we want it to look like, and then follow that script instead of just following the lizard brain?
I would say I can totally see where you get pushback on that, because if we say we set the script for our life, it feels like the script is the plot points, and the plot points are out of our control because they're external, right? So let's say you got divorced, right? That feels like a plot point in a script, but you're like, I didn't write that script. So what I would say is a slight adjustment that, at least for my brain, as you're saying it, I'm like,
Yes.
I would shift it just this way. Life is an improv, but if you know your character, you know how your character will handle those situations that are thrown at you, and you can set your character up for long-term success.
I like that. I guess what I'm saying is, there's a script to the character.
Yes.
So if you've ever even done improv or acting of any kind, on your sides, it's going to set up, what does this character look like? How does this character behave? What is the temperament of this character? And I think most people just let that evolve instead of deciding, no, in advance, I'm going to be this kind of person. I think that's the real discussion here too, is too many times we talk about the things we're going to do or have to find happiness instead of, what do I need to become to be happy? I believe happiness is a being concept, not a having or doing concept. Your thoughts?
I would say I agree with you there, because that's an external thing. Like, you have things, you can lose things. Let's just be honest. Or time can bring those things to a different perspective, or whatever that may be. However, I do think that happiness is an action, because there's I'm happy because I got the promotion. Yay, I've worked so hard. But that can be fleeting. There's the internal happiness, which is where you can set yourself up with habits every single day. My biggest habits are emotionally management based so that I can be tracking and understanding, okay, do I have a success today? I want that positive library in my brain versus the negative one that habitually I've had since I was a little kid. Like, oh, I did this wrong. I did this wrong. Well, no, what did I do right today? And start building the other side of the library, the catalog, building up that evidence. But then also like emotional management empowerment, like declarations, like singing and listening to positive music, your positive inputs, and also let go techniques. So, how do I have years of anger? I want to let that go so I can be happy. What can I do every single day to manage, understand, and work through those emotions so that I can come back? If we're looking at the emotional pendulum, there's the negative side and there's the positive side. And as humans, we go back and forth. But what we've started doing is we're living in the negative side with small blips to the happy side. And we need to shift to living in the happy side with small blips to the negative side. And we fix it. We acknowledge, we experience, we feel it. We don't hold on to it. We move back to the happiness side. And my hope is that by applying and taking action through happiness habits every single day, you can live on this side of the pendulum with those small blips and know how to handle those blips and live here much more fully and much more occasionally than you ever have before.
The big word there, habits.
Yes. Keyword.
So we develop those happiness habits.
Yeah. So developing your happiness habits, I think that we feel like when we have to be happy, again, eat, pray, love model, we feel like, okay, well, I don't have time. There's so many things going on in my life right now. I just don't have time to focus on one more thing. And I'm going to say, well, okay, you're lying to yourself. Because why are you doing all of the things that you're doing if it's not to do it with, in my definition of happiness, fulfillment, peace, and joy? What is the point, right? So you do have time. And in fact, a happiness habit can take less than 15 minutes a day. And that can be a small step in the right direction. So one habit, and I kind of briefly mentioned it, but I love this habit so much. It's so simple, but it makes such a big difference. And that is tracking a daily success. When I work with my clients, this is the very first thing. We sign the contract and I say, okay, great. Even before we've had our first meeting, what I need you to do is send me a daily success every single day for the duration of us working together. And I love it because we have a 10-week period for my one-on-one mentoring. And the first couple weeks, it's like the very last thing. I'm getting a success at the end of the day, right before they're going to bed, like, oh crap, I got to send Taylor a success. What did I do today that was good? But for weeks 4 to 6, I'm getting them in the middle of the day. Dude, I totally just knocked out of the park with this meeting. That's my success for today. And their brains and my brain, I've done this too. You start looking for the successes early on. So it's building the habit of, okay, I need a success today. So now I'm starting to look at the successes and find them in real time and tracking them. And then in our last couple of weeks together, I love it because I get full on like novels of text of I did this today and this today, this today and this today. And that is so empowering because before, all we saw, all we remembered, all we replayed was the negative things. But through making a habit of tracking your daily successes, now you're building up that positive evidence. And this is important because when you have that negative library, you don't feel capable. And my tagline for my whole business, everything that I am around and about is you are capable of happiness abound. Because here's the thing, when you start to feel capable, AKA you start building up those positive successes every single day, you make it a habit to look for them and track them, you start to feel capable. When you feel capable, you start to feel qualified. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I am worthy. I am deserving. And when you start to feel qualified, you can then feel confident. And when you feel confident, you are unstoppable. And the world is your oyster, and you can have happiness abound. So I believe that happiness habits can be as small as taking 5 minutes and going, what was a success today? And tracking it and starting to build in that direction. And that's just one. I'm happy to share more, but that's one of the key things that has helped my life. I love seeing it help my clients, and it really can transition from feeling that level of depression or anxiety, that chaos, that frustration, that anger, and starting to feel like maybe I am capable of more. I am capable of happiness. And then it's all uphill in a good way, right? It's all those next levels of your life from there.
That's a great habit. What else?
Okay, so another one that I love to do is called rote. And what that is it stands for, and I'm going to have to remember here because now I'm on the spot and I usually have my paper in front of me, but it stands for write, review, introspection, throw away, evolve. So essentially what you're going to do is on a piece of paper, whether it's typed or written, I like written, you're going to write, I am feeling blank because. And what that is that blank spot is the first negative emotion that comes to your mind. So I am feeling angry because ... Then you're going to do a bullet point underneath that and write why you're feeling angry. What happens to us is we're like, I'm angry. And our brain goes, why are we angry? And we say this story. And then we hold on to that story and this all happens in our head. So it feels chaotic. It feels confusing. I'm angry. I'm feeling the anger. This is the reason why. And we live in it and we don't move through it. So this exercise allows you to A, identify the emotion you're actually feeling, and B, go more than one story deep. So you're going to write a bullet point and what's the story of why I'm feeling angry? You're going to get it out of you, organized on paper, and then we'll get it away in a second. Then you're going to go to the next bullet point. What's another reason why I'm feeling angry? And you're going to write it out. What's the next reason I'm feeling angry? So you're writing it out, then you're kind of reviewing it. Then you're introspecting or observing, right? I think I said wrote originally. Same thing. And you're observing, okay, what, like, this is the story. That's really interesting. I wasn't really feeling like that was why I was angry, but there it is. Then what you're going to do is throw it away. So as you get through the stories, go until you can't go anymore. And you're going to continue to feel sometimes angry. You're going to continue to feel sometimes anxious. And you do this exercise every day. You start to clear those emotions out. You have an understanding. You have a recognition of what they are. And then you can throw them away. And so the point there is that you rip up the paper, you delete the sheet if it was on your computer, and you throw it away. You do not share with anyone what you wrote. So I'm not going to go to my husband and be like, so I wrote on my paper today, I'm angry and it's your fault. We're not doing that because that just perpetuates the situation and we're now blaming other people. But it's important to know the language that we're using. So what's the story we're telling ourselves around our emotion? We rip it up, we throw it away, and we can move about our day. Now, this is not saying that the stories aren't legit. You just, oh, they're made up, just throw them away. No, but instead it's allowing you to recognize, accept, and see why you're feeling an emotion and allow you to get that out of your body and out of your head so you can be more emotionally, mentally, and even physically clear to be able to move forward. And that's one that really works for me every single day as a habit because I can process my negative emotions. And then I can say like my declarations, and that helps me. So I'm letting go, I'm releasing through an emotional management technique. I'm empowering through an emotional empowerment technique through like a declaration. And then I'm applying the clear model every day. I'm tracking my successes. And those 4 habits alone can cause a big jump. And I have a quiz called Your Happy Score. And that's all about finding like the foundations of your happiness. It's 10 questions. It's 2 minutes long. And it tells you like where you're at on a scale of 1 to 100 in your like general and daily happiness. And knowing that, you can know if you're like at a 2, so a 20 range or a 30 range, so 2 or 3s, that you can improve. And by putting the happiness habits in place, even just the 4 I've shared today, you can start to see over the weeks, as long as you maintain those habits, you will go from the 20s to the 30s to the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even all the way up to the 80s, if not more, just from these happiness habits. And they're so simple. They can be less than 15 minutes a day. They don't have to be a huge overhaul. And I found in my own life, in my client's life, just those 4 alone, I mean, there's plenty more, but just those 4 alone can be a huge help.
So what kind of results are your clients reporting to you? What are they experiencing when they go through this process?
Yeah. So first off, they're experiencing from going from anxiety and chaos, and I'm going to say overthinking and like paralyzed because of that, to start and feeling like they're not successful, to starting to feel like they can be capable of happiness. And then they actually do feel happy every single day. And the results of that, and I love this question because it's not just like, I want to be happy. We say that, I want to be happy. But then what does that actually mean? Well, in the case of my clients and in my own life as well, it's improved relationships, better communication, deeper connections. It's improved money-making opportunities. And not that money makes you happy, but we need it to survive. So improved money-making opportunities. If I look at my own life and even in my clients' lives, if you're angry and frustrated, nobody wants to work with you. You're not getting those promotions. You're not getting those business deals. But if you start to be happier, people are like, wow, she's got something. I want to work with her. I want to do this, or I want to work with him. He's got something, and I want to be a part of that. And so you start making more money just naturally. Also, emotionally, you're cleared up to be thinking more critically and creatively than you ever have been before, because you've been emotionally managing and you're in a happier space. So your business starts to thrive even more. I work primarily with business owners, so that's a benefit and a result as well. So you make more money, so improved income, you have better relationships, and then you even have better health. Now, I am not a personal trainer, dietitian, or anything like that, but my clients see improved health. They lose the weight because they're not holding on to those negative emotions anymore. They're happier. They're feeling better about their lives. They're like, man, I feel great. I want to go take a walk with my spouse around the block. And all of that stuff that before you're like, I'm so overwhelmed with these emotions, I don't know how to handle them. And we're not even seeing that it's the emotions. Instead, we're like, oh, this thing happened at work. I just need to veg out. So you're watching Netflix, you're eating the cans of frosting. Again, hey, hand raised. That was me several years ago.
Cans of frosting.
Cans of frosting. They're so good, but so bad for you. And so you're numbing out. Well, what does that do to your relationships with your spouse? What does that do to your physical health? What does that do to your ability to creatively think about how I can be making more money in my life? It stagnates it. It diminishes those abilities. So by taking this initiative and the effort to be happy, figuring out what it means to you and putting into place the small happiness habits that can help you, your whole life can transform. And I believe you said it in my bio, but my title, what I go by, is Transformational Happiness Mentor, because you can transform your life through happiness habits. And I just get to have the honor to be able to assist on that front and help guide. But really, for the results for the clients, it's a transformed life. That's one that back when you're in the anger and depression, you almost couldn't have imagined. But now then when you're happier, you're like, wow, I've come so far and I'm so excited for what's next.
So how long has your transformation taken from the angry Taylor?
Yeah, the angry Taylor.
A little more happiness.
So
What's
my
that process been like? How many years? What obstacles did you run into in this transformation? Because you haven't arrived yet, right?
No,
process.
It's always evolving. Am I happy? A lot. Yeah. Do I think I can have more? Absolutely. But for me, it was a long journey. And it was 5 to 7 years before I finally reached back and went, wow, I actually am happy. This is great. But it was a long time. And there was a lot of setbacks. There was a lot of saying oh, I'm going to think positive, and then losing my temper on something stupid, and then being like, wow, I'm completely out of control. And having the shame and the guilt of I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I can't control my emotions. Everything feels so chaotic. I'm so frustrated and angry and resentful. There was shame, guilt, anger, fear of who am I without anger? Because I'd lived in it for so long. Right. And so there was a lot of those pieces that came and went, because it felt like 10 steps forward, 30 steps back. And that was a lot of that was my language that I used in my own mind of oh, I tried and I messed up. So I must not be meant for this. I must be meant to be angry all the time. And that just wasn't the case. But I had those beliefs, those expectations that it must be natural. So if it's not natural to me, I must be wrong. So there was, like I said, 5 to 7 year period for me of a lot of ups and downs, a lot of steps back, and being like, hey, come on, and kind of licking your wounds, but still living in that negative space before I started to really understand that this could be a learned skill, that the expectation of climbing this societal checklist wasn't going to make me happy. And that if I put this learned skill into place as a daily routine, as a happiness habit, that I was willing to test that out and to try it to see what the results would be. And the results in my own life have been amazing. I'm nowhere. I look back at that angry person and I'm like, that was a different life. And it's funny because now when I get angry, I'm like, hey, I know what to do. I've figured it out. This is what I need to fix here. This is what I can adjust here. This is the mental thoughts that I had around this. This was the language, et cetera, et cetera. And I can decide, do I want to stay angry right now? Or do I want to move to the other side? Because you don't have to always just shift over. You can say, I kind of want to stay angry right now. And that's okay. But it's a choice when before it didn't feel like it was a choice. It was just instantaneous. And that makes a huge difference as well. So 5 to 7 years, I finally looked back and went, wow, I'm actually pretty happy. And then I realized I cannot be the only one who's gone through or is going through this journey. And how can I help accelerate it so that people can be happier faster? And that's when I started my podcast. That's when I became a happiness mentor.
I'm curious, as you've coached others, what obstacles do they run into? Because a coach has that ability from an outside perspective to see something that the coachee is not going to be able to see for themselves. So what's kind of a common theme that you see as people go through this transformation that they run into that holds them back from finding more happiness?
I would say a blame on others. As much as we want to say, oh no, I'm good, I'm solid, I've been trying to be happy, it's my spouse that doesn't get it. That has shut down communications. So when they're feeling like, well, my spouse just doesn't get it, it's like, okay, but how could you present this in a way where you're like, hey, I'm working on this. I'm not forcing you to be happy, but I need you to know I'm working this direction, and have that open communication. That's a big one, because if you've lived in anger and sadness for so long, you feel like you can't communicate that you're trying to change, because what if you don't? Then that spouse or that partner might look down on you, or you've tried before and they're like, this time's not any different. So it's trying to work through that mindset that you can own this time will be different. You have help, and it's setting you up for success instead of just being like, think positively. No, we don't play that game. So that's a big one, is like, how do you have this open communication with your partner or your spouse, or even your friend group if you're not in a relationship, about, hey, I'm making these changes? Because some people see it and they're like, that's awesome. And other people see it and are like, what are you doing? And at that point, you're like, hey, yeah, I'm making some changes. I'm kind of investing into my life. I'm figuring things out. And yeah, I'm happier, and I'm working towards being happier all the time. So I think that communication is a huge one that people kind of get hicked up on. And they're like, I'm trying here, but I don't know how to convey this to other people, and I'm afraid of that judgment. So we work through that a lot. The other one is this idea of, well, there's just so much going on that, yeah, we're focusing on our happiness right now, Taylor, but this and this and this and this happened in my day. I'm like, okay, let's talk through it. What happened? Like, let's run the clear method. What were you thinking around all this stuff that makes it feel so overwhelming? And how can we time block so that you don't feel how can we organize so you don't feel quite so overwhelmed? So there's a little bit of that happens as well. And then the last piece I would say is, there's several. Each person's individual. We all have our own things that come up. But the other thing that I see is that we want to plan, because we feel safe, for every possible scenario. So a problem comes up, like, oh, on Wednesday, I can't take the kids to practice, and my husband's available, but he's going to be making dinner. So, and then they'll list out 20 different possible scenarios to fix this around what they think that the husband's able to do or what they're able to do, instead of saying, okay, so here's the situation. I'm going to try this. Let me go talk to my husband and see if we can have dinner half an hour later. Can we? Great. Awesome. Solved. I didn't have to have all the anxiety and all of the planning to try and feel safe in my decision. I could make that decision decisively. And if it didn't work, then be able to pivot again. And that's a big one. A lot of people, whether you're working with me or not, struggle with that. I want to come to the conclusion of all the possible scenarios before I make a decision. But that just slows you down, not only in your time frames, but that slows you down mentally and emotionally. It drains you physically. And then you're like, I can't do any of that stuff. And you feel like you're out of control. You're frustrated, you're angry all the time. So that's another big one, where we work through, how can we make decisions decisively, and how can we know and have the confidence that that's the right decision? And if it's not, be able to pivot, and it's not the end of the world.
So much good information.
I feel like I'm just spouting everything, but it's amazing, and I love working with people, and I love your questions.
I'm letting you spout, and everybody's loving this because they're taking notes too. And if you're watching this live or on demand, I invite you to also download this as a podcast, as that becomes available on the Coz Green audio experience, so that you can take Taylor with you in your car and listen to this over and over again. Just so much insightful information, and the habits and just the acronyms. And I'm taking a couple of things here. I like the shift for me is what you said about life is an improv. but I'm going to decide what character I want to be. I like that too. I'm taking that away, because if you've never done improv, you should go take an improv class just to understand what improv is all about. It'll be great for your personality, but making a decision as to who you're going to be, what rules you're going to live by, and then having clear expectations, all of these things coming together are so important. So leave us with kind of a summation, a call to action. How would you like to wrap things up today?
Sure. I would say first thing I would recommend is going to yourhappyscore.com and finding your baseline, because we may be having a bad day, but in general, we actually could be pretty happy. Or it's the other way around. You're like, I'm having a good day, but tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day are kind of rough. So going and getting your happy score, yourhappyscore.com, it's free. Like I said, 10 questions, 2 minutes, can help you figure out where that baseline is. And then you can be like, okay, now that I know how happy or unhappy I am, I can make the choice of how I want to grow this score. And at that point, you could apply the things that you learned here on the show today and start to track and pay attention and see how integrating those habits into your life can actually improve your score. Whether you're working with me or anybody or not, like though doing those things alone can really, really help shift your score. So that would recommend as my first takeaway. And the second thing is I end every single one of my shows this way. I think it's crucial. It's just a great reminder. And that is that regardless of where you're at, what's going on, you are capable of happiness abound.
Amen. I truly believe that, and I will second that happiness is a choice and it's possible. So whatever you're fighting inside that's holding you back from happiness, I hope the things that you've learned today will be helpful as you develop some of these happiness habits, and that you'll also continue on this journey of finding peace, joy, fulfillment, whatever happiness is for you in your own life. That's why we're here. And I'm so grateful for you sharing all of your valuable insight and your time with us today, Taylor. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
And for everybody, please rate, review, like all those crazy things that we do to help all these things grow organically. And remember, on this crazy Wednesday, keep shining brightly, because someone out there is wandering aimlessly through the dark who needs to be guided by your light. So be that light. Now, happiness is not all about what you do for them, but it can help in the process. So be happy and share that light. Have a great day, everybody. Subscribe to Coz TV and listen to the Coz Green audio experience on iTunes and Spotify.